The metallic taste flooded my mouth as I watched my stepmother's reflection in the hospital room window. She was adjusting something in my IV bag, her back to me, thinking I was still unconscious. The liquid entering my veins burned like fire, and the monitor beside me began to beep faster. She turned, startled, our eyes meeting in a moment of terrible clarity. The practiced concern on her face couldn't hide the flash of disappointment in her eyes when she realized I was awake. "Olivia, sweetheart," she said, voice honey-sweet as she quickly removed her hand from the IV line. "You're finally awake. Everyone's been so worried." "My name is Grace. I'm 28, and I'm a pharmaceutical researcher. This is the story of how I survived being targeted by my own family." My father appeared in the doorway, relief washing over his exhausted face. "Thank God the doctors weren't sure when you'd regain consciousness." He rushed to my side, oblivious to what I'd just witnessed. "Veronica hasn't left the hospital since they brought you in. She's been absolutely beside herself with worry." I tried to speak, but my throat felt scorched. The room tilted and spun as I struggled to focus. Behind my father, Veronica smoothly pocketed something small in glass, a vial, evidence. "She needs rest, Roger," Veronica said, placing a restraining hand on my father's arm. "And the doctor should check her now that she's conscious. Why don't you get some coffee while I call the nurse?" 3 months ago, my father had married Veronica after a whirlwind romance. A pediatric nurse, 15 years his junior, she'd charmed everyone with her seemingly perfect blend of sophistication and warmth. Everyone except me. From our first meeting, something felt wrong. Calculated smiles that never reached her eyes, an attentiveness that bordered on surveillance, a peculiar interest in my father's financial affairs. The incidents began shortly after she moved in, small at first, unexplained nausea after meals she prepared, dizziness that doctors dismissed as stress, strange metallic tastes in drinks only she had handled. Each time I raised concerns, my symptoms were conveniently gone by the time medical help arrived. "It's just the stress of adjusting to your new stepmother," my father would say, disappointment evident in his voice. "Veronica is trying so hard, Grace. You could make an effort, too." What my father didn't know, what Veronica hadn't counted on, was my background in pharmaceutical research. After the second incident, I began collecting samples, strands of my hair, fingernail clippings, even small amounts of the drinks and food that made me sick. I installed a microscopic camera in my bedroom and another in the kitchen. I started documenting everything. My best friend Mia, a laboratory technician, had agreed to run private analyses on my samples. "This is insane, Grace," she'd said, but the preliminary results changed her mind. "There are traces of heavy metals here, and something else I can't identify without more specialized equipment." I'd planned to show my father the evidence that weekend, but Veronica must have found my sample collection. The night before my planned confrontation, she'd served my favorite meal, a peace offering, she called it. Within hours, I was in the emergency room, my organs beginning to shut down from what doctors suspected was severe toxicity. Now, as my father left to get coffee, Veronica's mask slipped. She leaned close, her perfume suffocating. "You should have died last night," she whispered, checking to ensure no one was near the door. "It would have been peaceful. Now it will have to look like complications, a tragedy, but not unexpected given your condition." My heart monitor betrayed my fear, beeping rapidly as she adjusted something on my IV pole. The burning sensation in my arm intensified. "Nurse!" A sharp voice cut through the room. Dr. Russell, the attending physician, stood in the doorway, eyes narrowed. "What are you doing with that patient's medication?" Veronica's transformation was immediate and flawless. "Doctor, I was just checking the flow rate. It seemed irregular, and with my nursing background..." "You're not staff here, and you're not authorized to touch any medical equipment." Dr. Russell moved toward my fourth, examining it. "Please step away from the patient." Dr. Russell had been suspicious since my admission, noting the unusual combination of symptoms that didn't match typical poisoning cases. When my heart monitor alarm had alerted the nurse's station and he'd come to check, catching Veronica tampering with my IV, his suspicions were confirmed. My father returned, confusion etched on his face. "What's happening?" Mr. Richardson, we need to run some additional tests on your daughter, immediately. Dr. Russell's tone left no room for argument, and I'm afraid I must ask everyone to leave the room. But I'm family, Veronica protested, her hand finding my father's. And I'm a nurse. I should be here. That's precisely why you need to leave, Mrs. Richardson, Dr. Russell replied coldly. Security will escort you to the waiting area. As they led my father and Veronica out, I managed to rasp, period. My phone, in my bag. Dr. Russell retrieved it, placing it in my trembling hands. With fumbling fingers, I pulled up the text thread with Mia and typed, V tried again. Hospital. Bring results now. Within 20 minutes, Mia arrived, breathless and clutching a sealed envelope. Dr. Russell reviewed the lab reports, his expression darkening with each page. Miss Richardson, he said finally, these tests show significant levels of thallium and digitalis in your system. Both are extremely toxic and nearly undetectable without specific screening. This was not accidental. My stepmother, I whispered, my voice still raw. Check the fourth she was touching and test the vial in her coat pocket. Dr. Russell immediately called hospital security and notified the police. Within an hour, 2 detectives stood at my bedside while nurses replaced my entire IV system. We need to approach this carefully, Detective Simmons explained. Your stepmother is medically knowledgeable and clearly dangerous, but we need irrefutable evidence. Check my house, I rasped. Hidden cameras, kitchen and my bedroom, 3 weeks of footage. My father was kept away from Veronica while police obtained a warrant. The footage from my hidden cameras provided exactly what they needed. Clear video of Veronica adding substances to my food and drinks when no one was watching, searching my room, finding my sample collection, making phone calls discussing my father's will. When confronted with the evidence, Veronica's carefully constructed persona crumbled. The police discovered she had a history of similar behavior in 2 other states, with different names and different victims. Always older men with adult daughters who stood to inherit substantial estates. My father's devastation was complete. I brought her into our lives, he said, sitting beside my hospital bed after Veronica's arrest, his face aged years in days. I gave her access to you, to our home. I didn't believe you. She was convincing, I replied, my voice stronger now that the toxins were being flushed from my system. That's how predators like her survive. 6 months later, I sat in the courtroom as the judge sentenced Veronica Coleman, her real name, we learned, to 25 years without parole. My father and Mia flanked me, a united front as Veronica's mask finally shattered completely. "This isn't over," she screamed as officers led her away. "Rich girls like you deserve what you get. There are others like me everywhere." Her threats echoed in the courtroom, but they no longer held power over me. The worst had happened, and I had survived. In the years since her conviction, I've channeled my experience into creating the Richardson Foundation for Medical Justice, identifying and supporting victims of medical abuse. Every case we uncover, every predator we help expose, is another victory against what Veronica tried to do. My father has become the Foundation's most dedicated volunteer, reviewing cases with a keen eye for the manipulation tactics he once missed. Our relationship, nearly destroyed by Veronica's influence, is now stronger than it ever was. The latest case reports just came in, my father said last week as we worked late at the Foundation office. The Harmon family in Seattle. The daughter will make a full recovery. They caught it in time because of the warning signs we published. I nodded, feeling the now familiar mixture of satisfaction and purpose. Veronica had tried to silence me permanently, but instead, she'd given me a voice that now protected others. That's 17 lives saved this year, I said, updating our records. 17 families that won't go through what we did. Sometimes, as I work through new cases, I think about Veronica sitting in her prison cell. She thought she was destroying me, but she failed to understand a fundamental truth. Some people don't break under pressure. They transform. Every life we save is a reminder that her true legacy isn't harm, but the prevention of it. The Foundation continues to grow, our medical abuse identification protocols now implemented in hospitals across 3 states. What began as my desperate fight for survival has become a movement that saves lives and holds predators accountable. That's the thing about attempted harm. When it fails, it creates the most determined survivors. And survivors like me don't just heal. We make sure no one forgets what happened or who was responsible. Veronica wanted my inheritance. Instead, she gave me my purpose. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one. My stomach lurched as I watched my stepmother's perfectly manicured finger hover over the send button on her phone. 3 days before my wedding, Patricia stood in the River Oaks estate lobby, her voice carrying through the marble hall. I need to cancel Alexandra Taylor's wedding reservation immediately. She's mentally unstable. The property manager's eyes widened in alarm as Patricia leaned closer. I have documentation of her concerning behavior. In that suspended moment, as Patricia prepared to destroy everything I'd built, she hadn't noticed me standing in the doorway of the manager's office. She hadn't noticed the security cameras capturing her every word, and she certainly hadn't noticed the estate owner's nameplate on the door behind her, the one with my name engraved in gold. My name is Alexandra. I'm 32 and a real estate portfolio manager. This is the story of how I reclaimed not just my wedding day, but 20 years of my life. Patricia married my father when I was 12, just 2 years after my mother died of breast cancer. She arrived with her designer wardrobe and country club connections, immediately redecorating our home and, as I soon learned, our lives. Nothing about me ever quite measured up, not my naturally curly hair, my practical wardrobe, or my career choices. Alexandra, dear, she'd say with that particular tilt of her head, voice dripping with manufactured concern. No one will take you seriously unless you present yourself properly. Each criticism was carefully wrapped in concern, making me question my own perceptions. Was I being too sensitive? Too stubborn? My father retreated to his study whenever conflict arose, leaving me to navigate Patricia's subtle warfare alone. The dynamic worsened when my half-sister Melody was born, the perfect, compliant daughter who followed Patricia's life script exactly as written. She followed it right down to getting engaged to the son of Patricia's country club friend. I'd created distance over the years, limiting family interactions to holidays and occasional Sunday dinners. But when I got engaged to Nathan, a brilliant software engineer who'd built his own company, I knew the peace wouldn't last. A small wedding would be best, Patricia announced during Sunday dinner, not bothering to look up from her salad. Nothing too ambitious. We wouldn't want to overshadow Melody's upcoming wedding. I exchanged glances with Nathan across the table. We'd been planning for months already, an elegant but intimate affair at River Oaks Estate. It was a historic property I had quietly purchased and restored the previous year, using the substantial inheritance my grandmother had left me when I turned 30. Of course, Patricia didn't know that. She just knew it as the most exclusive venue in the city, with a 3-year waiting list. Actually, I said, taking a sip of water to hide my smile, we've already booked our venue, River Oaks Estate, this coming Saturday. The fork fell from Patricia's perfectly manicured hands. That's impossible. River Oaks is booked solid for the next 3 years. I tried to reserve it for Melody's wedding and couldn't get in. I shrugged, enjoying her discomfort. We got lucky. That's when the campaign began. First came the calls and texts, Patricia insisting we needed to discuss the wedding plans. When I didn't respond, she started showing up at my office, cornering me in the parking lot. Melody's been dreaming of a River Oaks wedding since she was a little girl, she pleaded, conveniently forgetting that Melody hadn't even seen the place until last year. How could you do this to your sister? Half-sister, I corrected, instantly regretting the words. Patricia's face hardened, and I knew I'd given her ammunition. This is exactly what I mean, she hissed. You've never accepted Melody as real family. You're still that angry little girl who resents having to share her father's attention." I walked away, but her words followed me. That was Patricia's special talent, finding the soft spots, the old wounds, and pressing on them just hard enough to make them bleed again. The week before the wedding, things escalated. Someone called all our vendors claiming to be my wedding planner, canceling services we'd booked. Fortunately, I'd anticipated something like this and had warned everyone to only accept changes with written confirmation directly from me. It didn't take much detective work to discover it was Patricia. Our wedding planner had shared the vendor list with her when Patricia claimed she wanted to contribute to certain expenses. Then gifts started arriving at our apartment: wedding planning books, self-help guides about managing anger issues, and pamphlets about therapy. They were all sent anonymously. But the message was clear. Patricia was laying groundwork, creating a paper trail to support whatever story she was spinning. The morning I overheard her on the phone with River Oaks Estate was when I knew exactly how far she would go. "Miss Taylor," James, the property manager, said, his voice tight with controlled anger when he called to warn me. "You should know that a woman claiming to be your stepmother just called. She's trying to cancel your wedding reservation, saying she's concerned about your mental state and potential dangerous behavior. She's threatening to call the police if we don't comply." I closed my eyes, counting to 10. "Let me guess. She's on her way there now to confirm the cancellation in person." "Yes, she said she's coming to sign whatever paperwork is necessary. She seems very determined." A plan formed in my mind. "James, here's what we're going to do." I arrived at River Oaks Estate 20 minutes later, parking my car where it wouldn't be immediately visible from the entrance. The property looked particularly beautiful that day. The afternoon sun highlighted the restored Victorian architecture I'd spent so much time and money preserving. Right on schedule, a sleek silver Mercedes pulled up, and Patricia emerged. She was dressed like she was heading to a board meeting rather than trying to sabotage her stepdaughter's wedding. I watched through the security feed as she strode into the lobby, making a beeline for the front desk where James waited. "I'm Patricia Montgomery," she announced, setting her designer handbag on the counter. "I called earlier about canceling Alexandra Taylor's wedding reservation." James, bless him, played his part perfectly. Yes, Mrs. Montgomery, I've been expecting you, but I'm afraid there seems to be some confusion." "There's no confusion," Patricia cut in. "I'm Alexandra's stepmother, and I'm telling you she's not in a proper state to be getting married. I have documentation." She reached for her bag. "That won't be necessary," James interrupted smoothly. "You see, Mrs. Montgomery, we can't cancel Miss Taylor's event because, well," he paused for effect. "This is Miss Taylor's property." The silence that followed was absolute. Patricia's face went through a fascinating series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally dawning horror. That's when I stepped out of the office behind the front desk. "Hello, Patricia," I said calmly. "We need to talk." Patricia swayed slightly, her perfectly maintained facade cracking for the first time in 20 years. This is your property?" Surprised? I kept my voice level, though my heart was racing. "I've owned River Oaks Estate for over a year. I'm the one who restored it, who turned it into the exclusive venue you so desperately wanted for Melody's wedding." She gripped the counter, her knuckles white. "That's impossible. You could never afford—" "My grandmother's inheritance," I cut in. "The one you spent years telling Dad I was too irresponsible to handle. Turns out I'm better at managing money and property than you thought." 20 years of suppressed emotions bubbled to the surface as I watched her process this revelation. How many times had she called me impulsive, unstable, immature? How many times had she whispered in Dad's ear that I needed more guidance and structure? "I have documentation," Patricia repeated weakly, reaching for her bag again, "about your behavior." "You mean the carefully crafted paper trail you've been creating?" I pulled out my phone, opening a folder of screenshots. There were the anonymous gifts of therapy books, the calls to vendors trying to cancel our services, the emails to the wedding planner suggesting I'm mentally unstable. Her eyes widened. How did you... I learned from you, Patricia. Document everything, right? That's what you always told Melody. I nodded to James, who brought out a thick folder. We have records of every call you made, every email you sent, every attempt to sabotage this wedding, including your threat to call the police with false claims about me. After you started showing up at my office, I hired a private investigator who's been tracking your movements and communications related to my wedding. I was only trying to protect the family image, she protested, but her voice had lost its usual authority. Your behavior has always been difficult. My behavior? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let's talk about behavior, Patricia. Let's talk about how you've spent 20 years trying to erase every trace of my mother from our lives, how you've manipulated Dad, isolated me, and turned Melody against me. That's not true. But her protest sounded hollow even to her own ears. Really? I pressed a button on my phone, and her voice filled the lobby. Alexandra's always been jealous of Melody. She's unstable, angry. I'm worried she might do something to ruin the wedding out of spite. Patricia's face drained of color as she recognized the recording, her conversation with Melody's future mother-in-law at the country club last week. What she didn't know was that Mrs. Bradford, disgusted by Patricia's behavior, had recorded the entire conversation and sent it to me. I have more, I continued. 20 years worth of more. Every manipulative comment, every subtle dig, every attempt to turn Dad against me. I kept records of everything, Patricia, just like you taught us. She straightened her spine, trying to regain control. What do you want? Money? Recognition? I want you to stop. My voice cracked slightly, and I took a deep breath. I want you to understand that you can't control everything and everyone, and I want you to know that if you try to interfere with my wedding or my life again, all of this evidence goes public. How would that affect the family image you're so desperate to protect? You wouldn't dare. But uncertainty flickered in her eyes. Your father will finally see who you really are. Is that what you're afraid of, Patricia? That Dad will finally understand how you've been manipulating everyone all these years? As if on cue, the lobby doors opened and my father walked in. Patricia spun around, her composure completely shattering. Robert, what are you doing here? Dad looked older than I'd ever seen him, his face lined with a sadness that made my heart ache. I got a call from Caroline Bradford, he said quietly. She was concerned about some things you'd said about Alex. We've known the Bradfords for years through the business community, and Caroline felt she needed to reach out directly to me. Patricia started to speak, but Dad held up his hand. Don't, just don't. I've heard enough. He turned to me, his eyes filled with regret. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have seen it sooner. Tears pricked at my eyes. Your mother would be so proud of you, he continued, his voice rough with emotion. This place, what you've built, it's amazing, just like you. Patricia's face hardened. Robert, you can't possibly believe... I believe I've been blind. Dad cut her off. Willfully blind because it was easier than facing the truth. But that ends today. He turned back to me. If you'll let me, I'd still like to walk you down the aisle on Saturday. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. As for you, Dad faced Patricia. We'll be discussing our future when I get home if we have one. Patricia fled the lobby, her designer heels clicking rapidly across the marble floor. Through the windows, we watched her Mercedes peel out of the parking lot, leaving only the scent of burnt rubber behind. The wedding took place exactly as planned that Saturday. The historic ballroom of River Oaks Estate glowed with candlelight, filled with people who truly cared about Nathan and me. Melody came, having finally heard the full story of her mother's manipulations. She hugged me before the ceremony, whispering, "I'm sorry," into my ear. Dad walked me down the aisle, both of us teary-eyed. As we passed the front row, I caught a glimpse of an empty seat, Patricia's absence more healing than her presence had ever been. During the reception, I snuck away for a moment, climbing to the estate's rooftop terrace, my favorite spot on the property. The city lights sparkled below as I thought about cycles broken, truths revealed, and bridges both burned and rebuilt. Nathan found me there, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Everything okay?" I leaned back against him, watching the stars. You know what? For the first time in 20 years, I think it really is. 2 weeks later, Dad moved out of the house he shared with Patricia. 6 months after that, their divorce was finalized. Patricia got her financial settlement, but she lost the one thing she valued most, her carefully crafted image of control. Melody got married the following spring, not at River Oaks Estate, but at a small beachfront ceremony that was entirely her own choice, not her mother's. She's slowly learning to find her own voice, to make decisions without seeking Patricia's approval. As for me, I still run the estate, overseeing other couples' perfect days. Sometimes, late at night, I walk through the restored halls, remembering how it felt to finally stand up to the person who tried to diminish me for so long. There's a new addition to the estate now, a small plaque in the garden next to a rose bush that blooms as wild and free as my mother's used to. It reads, "Period." In memory of Elizabeth Taylor, who taught her daughter that the greatest strength lies not in controlling others, but in being true to yourself. Patricia drives past sometimes, slowing down to stare at the estate she once desperately wanted to book. I've heard she tells people at the country club that she let me have it, that it was her idea all along. That's fine. We both know the truth. And nowadays, that's enough for me. Last week, a young bride came to tour the estate. As I showed her around, she mentioned dealing with a difficult mother-in-law who was trying to control every aspect of the wedding. I smiled and shared a piece of wisdom it took me 20 years to learn. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in winning the battle, but in choosing which battles are worth fighting. And sometimes, just sometimes, the best revenge is living well on your own terms. She got it. I could see it in her eyes, that spark of recognition, of determination. As she left, I watched her walk a little taller, stand a little straighter. That's the real magic of River Oaks Estate, I think. It's not just a venue for weddings. It's a place where people find their strength, their voice, their truth. A place where even the most carefully constructed facades can crumble, revealing something real and beautiful underneath. Like my mother always said, and like Patricia never understood, true class isn't about controlling the narrative. My name is Robin, I'm 15, and this is the story of how X-rays finally exposed the truth everyone refused to see. The boot crashed into my ribs with surgical precision. Not a random strike, but the exact spot Tom had targeted last month, the bruises barely yellowed. A fresh wave of agony exploded through my chest as something cracked deep inside. The sound, that horrible snap, echoed in our basement like a gunshot. "Get up!" Tom snarled, looming over me in his work boots and uniform, company logo still pristine, despite what he'd just done. I said, "Get up!" But I couldn't. My lungs refused to expand. Each shallow breath sent lightning through my torso. Black spots danced across my vision as I curled protectively around my broken body. Mom's footsteps hurried down the basement stairs. Her face went pale when she saw me on the concrete floor, still clutching the laundry basket I'd been carrying when Tom decided I'd disrespected him by not acknowledging his greeting fast enough. "What happened?" she whispered, though we all knew. We always knew. "Fell down the stairs," Tom answered for me, already crafting the story we'd repeat at the hospital. "Clumsy kid. Always has been." Mom nodded automatically, helping me to my feet as I bit back a scream. The familiar dance began, the careful construction of lies, the rehearsed explanations, the silent agreement to protect the monster rather than his victim. But something was different this time. The pain was worse, breathing nearly impossible. As Mom guided me to the car, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. Ghostly pale, lips tinged blue, eyes wide with something beyond fear. For 3 years, I'd perfected the art of hiding pain. Every bruise concealed beneath long sleeves, every fracture explained away as teenage clumsiness. Tom, my stepfather of 4 years, had been careful, strategic in his cruelty, never leaving marks where teachers might see, never breaking anything that would require immediate medical attention. Until today. "Remember what we talked about," Mom whispered as we drove, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "You fell down the stairs while carrying your laundry basket, that's all. We can't afford any questions, Robin. Tom's medical insurance covers all of us." I nodded slightly, trying not to move my chest. The stair story was our family's greatest hit, played on repeat every few months when Tom's anger needed an outlet. But stairs don't leave perfect boot-shaped bruises, and they don't target the same spots Tom did when he was teaching me respect. Jefferson Memorial Hospital's emergency room was quiet for a Tuesday night. Mom filled out the paperwork while I sat carefully still, counting my breaths like I'd learned to do. Shallow inhale. 1, 2. Careful exhale. 1, 2. Don't cry. Don't show pain. Don't tell. "Robin Anderson," a nurse called, looking up from her clipboard. "Come with me, honey." Mom jumped up immediately. "I'm coming, too. She's just a bit shaken from her fall." The nurse, whose name tag read Linda, led us to an examination room. She had kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. As she took my vital signs, I noticed her watching me, really watching me in a way that made me nervous. "Can you tell me what happened?" Linda asked, her pen poised over the chart. Before I could speak, Mom jumped in. "She fell down the stairs carrying laundry, just a silly accident." Linda's eyes never left my face. "Robin, I need to check your ribs. Can you lift your shirt for me?" I hesitated, knowing what she'd see. The fresh bruises from today mixed with older ones in various stages of healing. Mom stepped forward as if to stop the examination, but Linda's firm look made her step back. As I lifted my shirt, Linda's sharp intake of breath was the only sound in the room. The bruises painted a map of violence across my torso, boot marks clear as day, fingerprints on my arms, and the distinctive shape of a belt buckle on my back. "These aren't from stairs," Linda said quietly, her fingers gently probing my ribs. When I winced, she nodded to herself. "We need x-rays. Now." "Is that really necessary?" Mom protested weakly. "She's just bruised." "Mrs. Anderson, your daughter has difficulty breathing and significant bruising. X-rays are non-negotiable." The radiology department was 1 floor up. As they positioned me for the chest x-rays, I caught sight of myself in the machine's reflective surface. I looked small and broken, like a bird that had flown into a window too many times. "Stay very still," the technician instructed, stepping behind the protective barrier. The machine hummed to life, its mechanical eye seeing through skin and muscle to the truth beneath. I closed my eyes, thinking about how Tom had laughed earlier when I crumpled to the floor. "Get up," he'd said. "Stop being dramatic." But I couldn't get up, not this time. The pain was too intense, breathing too difficult. For once, even Mom had looked scared. Back in the examination room, we waited for the results. Mom kept checking her phone, probably getting angry texts from Tom wondering where we were. She told him we were going grocery shopping. Another lie in our house of lies. Dr. Karen Walker walked in, her face serious as she clipped several x-rays to the light box on the wall. "Mrs. Anderson, Robin, we need to discuss these results." She pointed to the images, her finger tracing white lines across my ribcage. "These are your current fractures," she said, indicating 2 clear breaks. Then her finger moved to other, fainter lines. "And these are previously healed fractures. I count 7 distinct breaks in various stages of healing, some potentially months or years old." Mom's face went pale. "That's impossible. She's just clumsy. She falls." "Mrs. Anderson," Dr. Walker interrupted, her voice firm but gentle. "These injuries are not consistent with falls. The pattern and placement indicate repeated trauma, intentional trauma." I stared at the x-rays, at the story they told in stark black and white. No amount of lies could explain away what the machine had seen. My secrets were exposed, written in broken bones and healing fractures. I'm legally required to report this, Dr. Walker continued, reaching for her phone. I've already contacted our hospital social worker and will need to speak with the police. No, Mom stood up, panic in her eyes. You don't understand. We can't. Tom will... Tom? Dr. Walker's eyes narrowed, making a note. Your husband? In that moment, watching Mom struggle between protecting her husband and protecting her daughter, I made a decision. For 3 years, I'd kept their secrets, swallowed their lies, hidden their truth. But the X-ray machine had given me something I'd never had before. Proof. Yes, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. Tom did this. All of it. The next few hours became a whirlwind of activity. Police officers arrived within an hour after Dr. Walker made the call to Child Protective Services, who immediately contacted local law enforcement. The officers spoke in hushed tones with Dr. Walker, while a social worker named Ms. Martinez sat with me. Mom paced the small room like a caged animal, alternating between pleading looks at me and frantic texts to Tom, telling him I was badly hurt and we were still at the hospital. Your X-rays tell a story, Ms. Martinez said gently, showing me a detailed report. Each fracture has a timeline. We can match them to specific incidents. Would you like to tell me about them? I stared at the dates listed on the report. March 15th, 3 broken ribs when Tom found out I joined the school drama club without permission. July 8th, fractured collarbone for coming home 10 minutes late. December 24th, 2 cracked ribs, Christmas Eve when I accidentally dropped his favorite coffee mug. He said no one would believe me, I whispered, touching the paper where my broken bones were documented in clinical detail. He said I had no proof. You have proof now, Ms. Martinez assured me. The X-rays don't lie. A commotion outside the room drew our attention. Tom's voice boomed down the hospital corridor, charm turned up to maximum. I'm looking for my stepdaughter, Robin Anderson. My wife called about an accident. Mom rushed to the door, but 2 police officers blocked her path. Through the small window, I could see Tom's familiar figure, still wearing his work uniform, his face a mask of concerned parenthood. Sir, one officer said, whoa, we need you to come with us. Tom's facade cracked slightly. What's this about? My daughter had a fall. I'm here to take her home. Dr. Walker stepped forward, holding my X-rays. Mr. Anderson, these images show a pattern of abuse spanning approximately 3 years. Would you care to explain the boot-shaped bruises on your stepdaughter's ribs? The change in Tom's expression was instant. The charm vanished, replaced by something dark and familiar. The face I'd seen countless times before. Pain exploded in my body. This is ridiculous, he snarled. She's clumsy. Always has been. Sarah, tell them. Mom stood frozen, looking between Tom and the X-rays Dr. Walker held. I could see the moment reality finally broke through her protective shell of denial. 7 healing fractures, Mom whispered, mostly to herself. 7. You knew, Mrs. Anderson, Officer Reynolds said quietly. While we process your husband's arrest, another officer will be sent to your home with a warrant to collect evidence. The belt mentioned by Robin will be key evidence in this case. Your husband is under arrest. As they led Tom away in handcuffs, he kept his eyes locked on me through the window. You'll regret this, he mouthed silently. But for the first time, his threats felt empty. He couldn't hurt what the X-rays had already exposed. Dr. Walker, supervised as a nurse, wrapped my ribs carefully. You'll need to follow up with our orthopedic specialists, she explained. And Robin, we're also referring you to Dr. Patel, one of our best trauma counselors. What happens now? I asked Ms. Martinez, watching Mom sink into a chair, her face buried in her hands. You'll need a safe place to stay while we investigate, she replied. Is there family you can go to? I thought of my Aunt Heather, Mom's sister, who Tom had forbidden us from seeing 2 years ago. My aunt. She lives 2 hours away. Ms. Martinez nodded, already dialing. We'll contact her. In the meantime, you'll stay in our pediatric ward. You need rest and monitoring for those ribs anyway." Later that night, in the quiet hospital room, Mom finally broke her silence. "I didn't want to see it," she admitted, her voice raw. "Every time you got hurt, I made excuses. Told myself it couldn't be what it looked like. I failed you, Robin." "You were afraid too," I said, understanding for the first time that Mom had been just as trapped as I was, just in different ways. "Fear isn't an excuse," she replied firmly. "I'm your mother. I should have protected you. But I promise you this. I'll never fail you again." The room's TV was playing quietly in the background when breaking news interrupted the regular program. My stomach dropped as I saw Tom's face on the screen. "Local businessman Thomas Anderson was arrested today on charges of child abuse," the reporter announced. "Sources say medical evidence, specifically X-ray images, revealed a long-term pattern of physical abuse. The police department issued a press release about the arrest due to the severity of the allegations." Mom quickly moved to turn off the TV, but I stopped her. "No," I said. "Let it play. Everyone should see who he really is." The night nurse brought me pain medication and a small pudding cup. As she checked my vitals, she smiled warmly. "You know what we call X-rays in the medical field? Truth tellers, because bones don't lie, and they never forget." I looked down at my wrapped ribs, thinking about all the secrets they'd kept and finally revealed. Tom had been right about one thing. Nobody would have believed just my word against his. But he'd forgotten that the truth has a way of coming to light, sometimes through the most unexpected means. My ribs ached with each breath, but each pain reminded me I was free. The X-ray machine had seen what everyone else had missed, and its silent testimony had finally given me a voice. 6 months after that life-changing night at the hospital, I sat in a courthouse, my ribs fully healed, but my memories still sharp. During those months, Mom had filed for divorce the week after Tom's arrest, consulting with a lawyer provided by a victim advocacy group. The divorce was finalized 3 months later, expedited by the court due to the documented abuse and Tom's ongoing criminal case. We had moved out of our house within 3 days of the incident, taking only what we needed and leaving behind the space filled with painful memories. The prosecutor had built a strong case around my X-rays, which now hung on large displays for the jury to see. Each image told its own story. Each healed fracture, a testament to survival. Aunt Heather sat beside me, her hand steady on my shoulder. After that night in the hospital, she'd taken both Mom and me in, helping us rebuild our lives piece by piece. Her home had become our sanctuary, a place where sudden movements didn't make me flinch and where closed doors stayed unlocked. "The evidence before you," the prosecutor addressed the jury, "shows not just one incident of abuse, but a calculated pattern spanning years. The X-rays tell us what this child couldn't, a story of systematic violence hidden behind closed doors." Tom sat at the defense table, his expensive suit unable to hide how jail had diminished him. He tried to claim the injuries were from my reckless behavior and attention-seeking stunts, but the medical experts had thoroughly demolished those lies. Dr. Walker testified about the night everything changed, her voice clear and professional. The pattern of injuries was inconsistent with accidental trauma. The boot marks on her ribs matched the defendant's work boots exactly. Most telling were the historical fractures, each one documented in the X-rays like chapters in a book of abuse. Mom's testimony had been harder to watch. She'd broken down on the stand, admitting her role in hiding the abuse. "I thought I was protecting our family," she'd sobbed. "But I was just protecting him while he hurt my baby." The trial had made headlines not just for the abuse, but for how it was discovered. X-ray justice, the papers called it. Medical schools were already using my case to train doctors about spotting signs of abuse. Child protection agencies updated their protocols to include comprehensive imaging in suspected abuse cases. When it was my turn to give my victim impact statement, I stood slowly, facing the jury rather than Tom. "For 3 years I lived in fear," I began. Every day was a countdown to the next injury, the next lie, the next cover-up. But machines don't lie. X-rays don't make excuses. They simply show the truth, even when people refuse to see it. The jury took only 2 hours to reach their verdict. Guilty on all counts. As the judge prepared to announce sentencing, Tom's attorney made one last plea for leniency. "Your Honor, my client has no prior criminal record." "No," the judge interrupted, holding up one of my x-rays. "He just wasn't caught. 20 years, with no possibility of parole for 15. The evidence of long-term abuse is literally written in the victim's bones." Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered with their cameras and microphones. The case had sparked a national conversation about domestic violence and medical evidence. The police had contacted the media after Tom's arrest as part of their standard procedure for significant cases, which explained how the story had spread so quickly. I'd received letters from other abuse survivors, many inspired to seek help after hearing my story. "What would you say to other kids living in abusive homes?" one reporter asked. I thought carefully before answering. Truth leaves marks. Maybe not always visible ones, but they're there. And sometimes it takes a machine to show what humans don't want to see. Don't stop trying to tell your truth. Mom had started working at a domestic violence shelter, using our story to help other families escape abuse. She learned to forgive herself, though the guilt still surfaced sometimes. Our relationship had grown stronger through therapy sessions we attended together, rebuilding trust that had been damaged during the years of abuse. "Every x-ray was a cry for help," she told me once. "I just didn't want to hear it until someone else showed me how to listen." Aunt Heather helped us find our own apartment near her house, close enough for support, but separate enough for independence. This happened about 3 months after the trial, when we felt ready to start fresh while staying close to Aunt Heather's support. My new room had wide windows and no locks on the door. On the wall hung a framed x-ray, my last one showing fully healed ribs. "Why keep it?" Mom had asked when I framed it. "Because it's the one that saved us," I'd explained. "It's not just a picture of broken bones, it's a picture of breaking free." Today, I'm starting my junior year of high school. The nightmares are less frequent now thanks to therapy and time. I joined a support group for teenage survivors where we talk about healing, both the physical and emotional kinds. Dr. Walker still checks on me occasionally. Last week, she invited me to speak to a group of medical students about recognizing signs of abuse. "Your case changed protocols," she told me. "Now we know better what to look for, what questions to ask, what lies might hide behind accidents and falls." The final x-ray still hangs on my wall, a reminder not of pain but of liberation. Sometimes late at night, I look at it and think about how something as simple as a machine, seeing through flesh to bone, changed everything. Tom had been right about one thing. No one would have believed just my word against his, but he never counted on science having my back. My ribs are strong now, fully healed, and ready to support whatever comes next. Each breath is a reminder. I am free, I am safe, and my truth is finally seen, written in the unshakable evidence of my own bones. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.